Welcome back to another deep dive. If you are looking at the calendar hanging on your wall right now,
Or staring at the date glaring at the top of your phone screen.
yeah, exactly. You probably operate under the assumption that it represents this, cold, hard mathematical fact, a rigid law of the universe.
Right. Like it's just pure science.
But today, we are going to completely dismantle that illusion for you. We are looking at the bizarre, messy, and honestly surprisingly duct-taped history of how humanity actually tracks time.
It is a history that really challenges our modern assumptions, I have to say. When you dig into the historical record, you realize very quickly that our current calendar is not some pristine exercise in astrophysics.
Not at all.
No, it is a massive, centuries-long clash of astronomy, religion, politics, and frankly, just sheer human stubbornness.
Okay, let's unpack this because we are going to explore missing days, time-traveling kings, and the completely mind-blowing reality that we're all, technically speaking, living in the wrong year.
We really are.
But before we get into time-traveling royalty, I want to clear up a persistent internet rumor first. You see this pop up constantly on forums and social media.
Ah, the hidden month theory.
Yes. The idea that a 13th month was somehow secretly deleted from our modern calendar by some shadowy historical authority.
It is an incredibly pervasive theory, but looking at the historical data, we can safely debunk that right out of the gate. The current global standard, the Gregorian calendar, was designed from its absolute inception as a 12-month solar system.
So no secret deleted month.
There was never a 13th month to delete or hide. But rumors like that usually have a grain of truth, right? And in this case, the truth is that 13-month calendar systems have existed for a long time, and some are still in use today.
Like the Hebrew calendar, right? That incorporates a 13th month.
Precisely.
Yeah.
To keep their religious holidays perfectly aligned with the proper agricultural seasons, the Hebrew calendar adds a leap month called Adar 2.
Okay.
And they do this very systematically. It happens 7 times every 19 years.
Wow, that is specific.
It is. The ancient Romans had a similar mechanism too. Before Julius Caesar reformed things, they would occasionally just jam an intercalary month called Mercedonius into the year.
Just to fix their seasonal drift.
Exactly. Just to force the seasons back into alignment.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the idea of a 13-month calendar isn't just a relic of ancient Rome or purely a religious tool.
No, it's not.
In the early 20th century, there was this massive, incredibly well-funded global movement to switch the entire world's business infrastructure to something called the International Fixed Calendar.
That initiative is one of the great modern historical what-ifs. The International Fixed Calendar proposed a year made up of 13 months. And every single month would have exactly 28 days.
Which gives you 364 days.
Right. To round it out, you would have one floating year day at the very end of the year. And that day didn't belong to any month or even any day of the week at all.
And they had a name for this brand new 13th month, didn't they?
They did.
They wanted to call it Sol and wedge it right between June and July. Now, if this just sounds like a quirky thought experiment by a few eccentric mathematicians to you, it wasn't.
Not at all.
The Eastman Kodak Company, which was an absolute global corporate juggernaut at the time, actually adopted this calendar.
They really did.
They used the 13-month, 28-day Sol calendar internally for all their accounting, planning, and scheduling from 1928 all the way until 1989.
Think about the logistical reality of that for a moment. For over 60 years, Kodak employees were essentially living in a completely different timeline while they were at the office.
It's wild.
From a purely administrative standpoint, though, it is an accountant's dream. Every month is exactly 4 weeks long.
Right.
Every month starts on a Sunday and ends on a Saturday. Your payroll is perfectly symmetrical.
But imagine being an employee. You are trying to schedule a vendor delivery with a company outside of Kodak or just trying to explain to your family when your quarterly review is.
Yeah, that would be rough.
And you're operating in the month of Sol while the rest of the world is just trying to get through July. It sounds like an absolute nightmare for external communications.
And that massive logistical friction is a major part of why it failed to catch on globally.
I bet.
The business world realized very quickly that you cannot easily divide 13 months into even financial quarters.
Oh, right. 13 doesn't divide by 4.
Exactly. But the pushback wasn't just corporate. It was deeply cultural.
How so?
Well, religious groups mounted intense opposition because of that floating year day. It meant the traditional Sabbath would wander through the days of the week from year to year.
Ah, because the year day didn't have a day of the week attached to it.
Right, so Sunday wouldn't always be Sunday. Ultimately, people are deeply attached to the rhythm of their lives.
Mm.
You can't just legislate a fundamental shift in how human beings perceive the passage of time without immense pushback.
Which makes me wonder if just trying to reorganize the months for corporate accounting caused that much societal friction. How did people handle it when literal days were deleted from the calendar?
Ah, yes.
Because while the 13th month wasn't deleted, days absolutely were. If you were living in October of 1582, you went to sleep on Thursday, October 4th. And when you woke up the next morning, it was Friday, October 15th.
10 days.
10 days, just gone overnight.
That overnight jump was the drastic solution to a mathematical crisis known as the Julian error.
Okay, tell us about the Julian error.
So Julius Caesar's calendar, which the Western world had been using for over a millennium and a half at that point, calculated the solar year as exactly 365.25 days.
Which seems pretty close.
It is close, but the actual solar year is slightly shorter than that by about 11 minutes.
I mean, 11 minutes a year doesn't sound like a crisis.
Not in a single lifetime, no. But over the course of 1,600 years, those extra 11 minutes quietly compounded.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. By 1582, the calendar had drifted by 10 full days.
So the dates were just completely out of sync with the seasons. Exactly. And this created a massive theological crisis for the Catholic Church. The spring equinox, which is the foundational anchor for calculating the date of Easter, had drifted all the way from March 21st to March 11th.
That's a huge jump.
Pope Gregory XIII and his astronomers realized that if they didn't take drastic action, Easter would eventually drift right into the middle of winter.
Completely detaching the holiday from its seasonal meaning.
Exactly. So they simply cut 10 days out of the calendar to snap the equinox back into place.
But out of all the months in the year, why do this massive societal reset in October? Why not start fresh in January?
It was a highly pragmatic, strategic choice, actually. Pope Gregory's advisors scoured the calendar looking for a window with the fewest major religious festivals.
Ah, looking for a quiet week.
Right. They chose the period immediately following the Feast of St. Francis of Assisi on October 4th. It was the only way to ensure the minimum amount of disruption to the Church's complex liturgical schedule.
Okay, so the Pope decrees this, and the heavily Catholic countries fall in line. But obviously 1582 is post-Reformation.
Yes.
The rest of the world wasn't just going to take orders from Rome, right?
Not at all. Protestant and Orthodox countries outright refused to adopt a timeline dictated by a Catholic pope.
Naturally.
And because of that ideological stubbornness, the global map was suddenly plunged into two entirely different timelines for centuries.
And this is where the historical anomalies get incredible. Let's look at Great Britain and its American colonies.
Right.
They held out until 1752. By the time they finally gave in and adopted the Gregorian calendar, the drift had worsened. So they had to skip 11 days instead of 10.
Because of that extra time that had passed.
Exactly. And you always hear these wild stories about people rioting in the streets of London chanting, "Give us our 11 days."
You do hear that a lot.
But I have to ask, were they actually rioting over superstitious fears of time travel, or was it something more grounded?
What's fascinating here is how often history patronizes the working class.
What do you mean?
Well, while some modern historians suggest the physical riots might have been exaggerated by political satirists of the era, the underlying anxiety driving the public outcry was intensely real and entirely rational.
Okay.
Imagine being a day laborer in 1752. The government just erased 11 days from the month. You are genuinely terrified that you're going to lose 11 days of critical wages.
Oh.
But your aristocratic landlord is still going to demand a full month's rent.
Oh, wow. The transition was an economic shock.
Exactly. It wasn't about missing time. It was about missing money.
That makes total sense. It wasn't ignorance. It was economic survival.
Precisely.
But the confusion definitely extended beyond the working class. Look at George Washington's birthday.
That's a great example.
It is a perfect microcosm of how confusing this was on a personal level. He was born on February 11, 1731, under the old-style Julian calendar.
Right.
But after the British switch in 1752, he started celebrating his birthday on February 22, 1732.
He shifted the day and the year.
He completely changed the year of his birth. He didn't just shift by 11 days.
That highlights another massive, often overlooked change tucked into this calendar reform. Under the old Julian system, the new year didn't officially start until late March.
Oh, I see where this is going.
The Gregorian reform standardized the start of the new year to January 1st.
Okay.
So if your birthday was in early February, like Washington's, you technically gained a year on paper.
Because what used to be the tail end of 1731 was suddenly redefined as the beginning of 1732.
Exactly.
My brain hurts just thinking about auditing the paperwork from that era.
It was a mess.
But the logistical nightmares go so much further than birthdays. Look at William of Orange, also known as William III.
Ah, the time-traveling king.
Yes. In 1688, he set sail from the Netherlands, which is operating on the Gregorian calendar. He leaves on November 11th with a massive naval fleet to invade England.
Oh,
But England is still on the Julian calendar, so he lands on English shores on November 5th.
it's just brilliant.
He literally arrived nearly a week before he launched his invasion.
It creates an absolute geopolitical nightmare. Think about trying to coordinate international diplomacy, trade, or military alliances when neighboring empires are living almost 2 weeks apart.
Right.
If you sign a treaty on the 10th, and the courier takes 3 days to deliver it, but arrives on the 2nd.
The legal and historical documentation becomes a labyrinth.
Completely.
And this wasn't just a quirky problem from the 1600s. Fast forward to the modern era, the 1908 London Olympics.
This one is painful.
The Russian shooting team showed up 12 days late for their events.
Cope days.
Russia still hadn't switched off the Julian calendar. They completely miscalculated when the international games actually began, showed up ready to compete, and found out the medals for their events had already been handed out.
It is a stark reminder of how long global standardization really took. But perhaps the most disastrous attempt to bridge these two timelines happened in Sweden.
Ah, the Swedish gradual plan. This is amazing.
It really is.
Instead of ripping the Band-Aid off and skipping 10 days all at once, Sweden decided to do a gradual 40-year transition by just skipping all the leap days until they slowly caught up.
Which sounds reasonable on paper.
Sure, they skipped the leap day in 1700, everything is going according to plan, and then they just forget to skip the next 2 leap days. How does an entire nation just forget to update the calendar?
Well, they were deeply distracted by the Great Northern War.
Ah.
When a nation is fighting a massive multi-front conflict for survival, meticulous calendar adjustments tend to fall off the administrative priority list.
So they forget the adjustment, and suddenly Sweden is completely out of sync with both the old Julian calendar AD, the new Gregorian calendar.
Right.
They accidentally isolated themselves on their own entirely unique timeline that no other country on Earth shared.
Exactly. Which forced the Swedish government to abandon the gradual plan entirely. In 1712, they decided the only way out of the mess was to go back to the old Julian system and start over. But to do that, they had to add an extra day back in to compensate for the leap day they skipped in 1700.
Oh my goodness.
So for 1 year only, in 1712, Sweden had a February 30th.
February 30th.
It remains the only time in recorded human history that a February 30th has officially existed on a national calendar.
So what does this all mean? It means the entire foundation of our schedule is held together by historical tape and string.
Truly.
And we haven't even touched on the biggest flaw yet. The days are patched, the months are misaligned, but the craziest part is that we are all, right now, living in the wrong year.
We are. The entire global system of numbering years is based on a foundational miscalculation.
Okay, break this down for us.
To understand why, we have to look back to the 6th century, around 525 AD. A monk named Dionysius Exiguus was tasked with projecting future dates for Easter.
Oh.
Up until then, years were generally counted from the reign of the Roman Emperor Diocletian. But Diocletian had heavily persecuted Christians, and Dionysius wanted to sever that historical tie.
Makes sense.
He decided to reset the calendar to count forward from the birth of Jesus Christ, creating the Anno Domini system.
A completely logical plan for a monk, but Dionysius was apparently a much better theologian than he was a historian.
He was working with the limited historical fragments available to him at the time, but yes, his math was fundamentally flawed.
How far off was he?
Well, the primary biblical texts state that Jesus was born during the reign of King Herod the Great. And thanks to an abundance of secular historical records and highly precise astronomical data, specifically a lunar eclipse meticulously recorded by the ancient historian Josephus Hackia,
Right.
we know definitively that King Herod died in the year 4 BC.
Meaning if Jesus was born during Herod's reign, the birth had to happen before Herod died.
Exactly.
Which places the actual historical birth somewhere between 7 BC and 4 BC. Dionysius missed the mark by at least 4 to 7 years.
Yes, he did.
Meaning our concept of year one is totally arbitrary. If we were actually following the system Dionysius intended to create, We should realistically be in the late 2020s or early 2030s right now?
This raises an important question, though. Once modern historians and scholars figured out the math was objectively wrong, why didn't we fix it?
Yeah, why didn't we?
The answer is the sheer weight of administrative debt. By the time this chronological discrepancy was widely recognized, the Anno Domini system had been the absolute bedrock of official records, property deeds, international laws, and treaties for over 1,000 years.
Oh, shifting, it would be impossible.
Trying to force the entire global population to shift the year count forward by 7 years would have broken society on a structural level. So the world collectively agreed to just look the other way and accept the error.
Well, the Western world did. But there is a massive exception to this rule.
Yes, there is.
Ethiopia never agreed to ignore the math.
They certainly did not.
Yeah.
The Ethiopian Orthodox Church never adopted Dionysius's Western calculation.
They just stuck to their own system.
They maintained an older, independent mathematical tradition that places the Annunciation of Christ about 7 to 8 years later than the Gregorian calendar calculation.
So, if you are a listener to this deep dive right now, today, on March 8, 2026, and you happen to be in Ethiopia, you are currently living in the year 2018.
It's true.
They just celebrated their massive New Year transition from 2017 to 2018 a few months ago on September 11, 2025. And right now, it isn't March, it is the month of Megabit.
It's a remarkable, deeply resilient system. Beyond the debate over historical accuracy, the calendar is a profound point of cultural and national identity for Ethiopia.
I can imagine.
And structurally, it is fascinating. The Ethiopian calendar consists of 12 months, each exactly 30 days long.
And then they have the 13th month. The concept returns.
Yes, the month of Pegum. The name literally derives from a Greek word meaning added on.
Ah, I love that.
It acts as a concise transition period of 5 days or 6 in a leap year. This very consistent structure gives Ethiopia its famous international tourism slogan, 13 months of sunshine.
That is brilliant marketing.
What's really impressive is the cognitive flexibility it requires. Many Ethiopians are essentially bilingual in timekeeping.
What do you mean by bilingual in timekeeping?
They utilize the traditional calendar for agriculture, daily life, and national holidays. But they can seamlessly code-switch to the Gregorian calendar when dealing with international business or global software.
And their entire conceptualization of the daily clock is different too, isn't it?
It is.
The Ethiopian 12-hour clock starts at sunrise, which aligns with 6:00 a.m. on the Western clock.
Right.
When you really think about it, their way makes so much more intuitive sense. The sun comes up, the day begins, that's hour one.
It's very grounded in nature.
Exactly. Why do the rest of us insist on starting our days in the pitch black of midnight? It's just another stark example of how arbitrary our established systems are. Which brings me to the actual words we use to navigate this timeline.
Oh, the month names.
Because if you stop taking the names of our months for granted, they make absolutely zero mathematical sense.
The numerical discrepancy is glaring. Yeah.
Right. September, October, November, December, just looking at the linguistic roots. Septem is 7, Octo is 8, Novem is 9, Decem is 10.
Right.
But they are our 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th months. How did an entire civilization mess up counting to 12 so badly and just leave it that way for 2,000 years?
Well, we have the early Roman military to thank for that misalignment.
The military?
Yeah, the original Roman calendar did not begin in the dead of winter. It started in March.
Okay.
March was named for Mars, the Roman god of war. This was highly practical because March was the time of year when the brutal winter weather finally broke, allowing the Roman legions to resume their military campaigns.
So if you count March as month number 1,
then September is perfectly aligned as the 7th month, and December is precisely the 10th.
So what happened to January and February? Were they just ignored?
Originally, yes.
Really?
The deep winter period was basically viewed as an unorganized, agriculturally useless chunk of time that didn't even warrant formal month names.
Just a void of winter.
Exactly. Eventually, as society became more complex, they formalized that period by adding January, named for Janus, the two-faced god looking backward at the old year and forward to the new,
Oh, that makes sense.
in February, derived from a Latin word for a purification festival. But when those 2 months were eventually shifted to the start of the year, it completely ruined the numerical naming scheme for the entire back half of the calendar.
And then, of course, the emperors realized they could use the calendar for permanent PR.
Naturally. What we now call July used to simply be called Quintilis, meaning the 5th month.
Right.
But in 44 BC, it was renamed in honor of Julius Caesar. A few decades later, his successor, Augustus Caesar clearly felt that if Julius had a month, he needed one too.
Had to keep up.
So the sixth month, Sextilis, was rebranded as August.
The transparent ego of it is
It
hilarious.
really is.
But what I love is that humanity hasn't always relied on gods and emperors to tell time. If you look back at the historical record, the monk bead documented an old English calendar back in 725 AD, and it completely strips away the ego.
It's a fascinating contrast.
It is wonderfully, brutally practical.
It was a deeply functional, localized calendar. The names weren't monuments to rulers. They were immediate reflections of what was happening in the natural world around them.
Yes. February was Salmanath, which literally translates to mud months.
Month.
Honestly, anyone who has ever lived through a damp, freezing February knows that mud month is the most scientifically accurate name possible.
Hard to argue with that.
August was Weedmanath, or weed month, because the overgrowth was taking over the fields. And my absolute favorite, May, was Thrimiltsmanath, the month of 3 milkings.
The spring grass was so lush and nutritious that you could milk your cows 3 times a day.
You don't need a planner. The name of the month tells you exactly what your daily labor looks like.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it illustrates how localized human experience use to dictate our concept of time. Before global trade, international flight paths and instant digital communication required all of humanity to sync up to one rigid grid. Your calendar was dictated by the dirt under your feet and the specific stars above your head.
That's a great way to put it.
We see this beautifully preserved in the traditional Hindu calendar as well. The Sanskrit month names aren't arbitrary political monuments. They're deeply tied to the 12 signs of the zodiac and the specific constellations where the moon is full during that period.
And the linguistic connection between that ancient Sanskrit system and the Roman calendar completely blew my mind. I had no idea they were related.
It is a stunning piece of linguistic anthropology.
Tell us about it.
The numerical roots of those mismatched Latin months we just complained about, September through December, share a direct Indo-European lineage with Sanskrit numbers.
Wow.
The Latin septum for 7 shares a deep root with the Sanskrit saptum. October's octo directly relates to astum. November's novem relates to navam, and December's decem relates to dasham.
That's incredible.
It means that thousands of years of human migration, spanning across vast continents and divergent cultures, is quietly preserved right there in the names of the months you write down on your grocery list.
It is incredible, and I think that's the perfect place to pull all of this together, because what diving into this history really shows us is that the date sitting at the top of your planner isn't some fixed, infallible scientific law handed down by the universe.
No, it is not.
It is a massive, messy patchwork quilt. It's a tapestry woven together from the egos of ancient Roman emperors, the compounding math errors of medieval monks, papal decrees, global wars, agricultural cycles, and centuries of linguistic evolution.
And understanding that chaotic history is actually quite liberating.
Liberating. How so?
Well, it gives us permission to step back from the relentless grinding stress of our modern schedules.
Oh, I see.
When you fully realize that the clock and the calendar are just human tools. Right. Tools that we have constantly broken, fixed, skipped, argued over, and patched together across millennia, it reminds us that we are perfectly capable of questioning them.
That is true.
Timekeeping is an invention designed to serve human life, not a master we are meant to blindly obey.
Absolutely. We made the whole thing up, which leaves me with one final provocative thought for you to chew on today.
Let's hear it.
As humanity looks to the future, we are eventually going to expand beyond Earth and colonize other planets. Take Mars, for example. Mars has a 687-day orbit around the sun. It has a completely different axial tilt, resulting in wildly different seasons.
Everything changed.
The Gregorian calendar is going to be utterly fundamentally useless there. So when we sit down to build the very first official Martian calendar, what will we do? Will we finally take the unprecedented opportunity to create something purely logical and mathematically perfect?
That's the big question.
Or will we drag all of our messy, ego-driven, patched-together Earth habits with us out into the stars? Think about it. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.